All right, it is 6:31 on October 2nd already. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. If you join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right. Well, welcome. We've got about 15 days in a row of beautiful weather, so it's better to do than come on in for a select board meeting. It's perfect. First thing we got is the warrants. I'll start down to my right. If Jeff, if you don't mind doing the payroll warrants, please.
Yep, we have two payroll warrants. The first one is dated for the week of September 29th, 2023. And the other one, I did it backwards. I did the new one first. So I'm gonna go back and say the first payroll warrant is for the week of September 22nd of 2023. And that is in the amount of $25,428.58. And in the details of that, there is a correction that was made dated 9/22. I'm not quite sure. Maybe Anna, what was that correction for $1,834.23?
That was a payroll correction for Carrie on her last payout.
Okay, yep. And then the second warrant is for September 29th, 2023. And that one is for a lot more. That's for $50,312.90, but it also includes all the agency checks that we pay in. So I would make a motion that we approve these warrants. Tonight.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Let's see, Jonathan with the general warrant, please.
Okay, I have the general fund warrant dated September 28th, 2023. The amount of $183,279.89. The big ticket item on this warrant is the payment to the St. Albans Library in the amount of $162,680. And then we have also just under $5,000 to Northwest Regional Planning. I make a motion that we approve this general fund warrant.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
I was gonna say, I think that one, the library was 88% of the bill. If that wasn't on this one, this would have been the smallest general fund warrant I think I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Thank you. And then
I got the smallest warrant I've ever seen, like ever.
let's hear about it.
Okay, Stonehouse warrant, one part of the receipt from Costco. They were bowls for the chili competition, $12.99. Make a motion to approve.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
DPW reserve, October 2nd, 2023. It's the Kubota zero turn we approved previously. So $23,011.76. Make a motion to approve.
Second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The stormwater utility warrant, this one's interesting. It's got, the grant total is $16,525.83. $7,500, or just about 45% of it, is our annual contribution to SAWA, the St. Albans Watershed Association, for the weed harvester. We used to pay that out of the general fund every year under the charitable contribution line for that segment of the budget, but we moved it to stormwater when we started the utility and then dropped it off the property tax bill. We've got an invoice for just about $5,600 from Gosselin Construction for helping us put in a giant culvert on Lord Road. We had to shut the road down for a couple of days, I think. So they helped us get that done faster. This one here, we've got two invoices, one from Swanton Lime or Sheldon Limestone, and one from Borbos. They both total to be about $3,400. And then we got a $40 bill from Clarence Brown for filling up some cans with regular gasoline. I'm gonna guess that's for the compactor. You guys have been running it like crazy.
Yeah, all of those bills were working on Ward Road, we have it.
Oh, cool.
And they came in under budget too, so, yeah.
So stormwater utility warrant, $16,525.83, October 2nd, 2023. I make a motion to approve.
Second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I think we have one more, Brendan.
Nope. We got 3 of them.
Oh, we do get that. Sorry. I got them all up here. I'm trying to keep track and look ahead here. Sorry. All right. So next item on is the minutes, and I think we have just one set, which is our regular meeting of September 18th. See if anyone wants to make a motion to pass those.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, sorry. Yeah, I think I got 3. Jack, you said yes?
Yeah.
Aye, thank you. Beautiful. Next up, we do have public comment. So I'll start with people who are here first. If there's anyone here who'd like to make a public comment, then we'll go to Zoom. All right, anyone on Zoom want to make a public comment? I think
I'll make a comment. This is Amanda Giroux. Just wondering if it's in the books or in the works to fix the Stonehouse stairs. I know I asked last summer and another summer went by without fixing the stairs, and I know the roof needs to be repaired from being on the Parks and Rec Committee. Just wondering if that is going to be done in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, the roof is about to be put out to bid. If you want to talk about the stairs, Dave.
would you mind if you do it, if you wouldn't mind coming up to so we can record it for posterity?
It should be a familiar place for you.
Yeah, might as well get comfortable.
Just get him a nameplate.
That's a great question, Amanda. Thank you.
So yeah, the request for proposals is all prepared for replacing the slate roof on the stone house.
Mhm.
I've submitted all the documentation to SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Officer, because we have to get a permit from them before we can do any work there. So I'll probably have the thing out on the street tomorrow. I don't anticipate we're gonna have any problem with the permit. We don't need a shoreland encroachment permit. It is within 250 feet of the shore, but we're not doing any kind of excavation or creating any more impervious. So that's gonna be out there. And as far as the stairs go, we just didn't have time to get to those this year. So I think in the past, John has a proposal from somebody. It's probably a year or two old now at this point. And then we haven't had a chance yet to take out that ADA ramp that was put in there. So hopefully next summer we'll be able to get it all taken care of.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but you did hear back from the state. If we remove it, we do not have to pay for the permit.
That is correct, because we don't have, yes.
Just, I know that came up last time.
Let me just stay here.
We can. Yep. Thanks for that update. And so we were talking with Sean about just, so many great things going on, and just to stay on them. Because they can take a while. There's more to it than just send the guys over tomorrow and get it done. That's for sure. Any other public comment, either on Zoom or here in the hall? All right, so we'll move next to, we have the stormwater ordinance on. We also have, which was added, work in the right of way.
Yeah.
I know Sean had sent me a message earlier to see if he thought it made sense if we just switched the order of those. So I didn't know if the select board would like to do that, where we would hear from Dave on work in the right of way, which may or may not help us, or color what we're going to talk about with stormwater ordinance anyway.
Plus also just moving forward, I've been kind of following previous templates of the agenda. I think it makes more sense to have, department that have their own line on the agenda rather than it be under the town manager report.
Okay. So if the board would like to do that, we can make a motion and just change the order on those if you'd like, or we can continue with the ordinance first.
So we'll.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we'll just switch that and the agenda order. So it's, they'll both be there. We'll just start with Sean and the Department of Public Works, Dave Horton. So I'll turn over to Sean or over to Dave.
Dave.
There.
Okay, so it was really meant to be stated as work in outside of the right of way, actually, not work in the
Oh,
right of
I'm
way.
sorry.
No, that's
You're
okay.
right.
In or out.
It was a little communication snafu there early on when it went out. So, but anyway, the memo I submitted to everybody definitely says for work outside the right of way. As everybody knows, it's the DPW's job to keep the right of way clear so the vehicles can travel and take care of the roads, take care of the trees, make sure everything is okay. Once we get outside the right of way, we can run into some problems. I tried to list out, all the work that we've been trying to do, and I've been contacted by, over half a dozen people saying that there's issues on their private property, and there was even another one today, which is another story, is up on Thorpe Avenue, but it's even different. So, but it's all got to do with stormwater, and we all know that that's the kind of big concern we're dealing with right now. So the way I see it is we can either take on the work and do everything we need to outside the right of way to make sure our stormwater conveyances are moving, or we can do none of that work and make sure that the residents know how to do it and know what they're doing, and that they work through us to do it, or there's some in between in there. It generates a lot of problems too. Once we start working outside the right of way, access to these places is not easy. I mean, several of these places that have already contacted us, we'd have a hard time getting equipment in there. And if we did, we would just tear up their lawns and everything, just trying to get vehicles in there. And I know there was some point in the past where they tried to go out on private property somewhere and they got the loader stuck, or the excavator stuck. John might be able to answer more details on that, but I can see that being an issue too. Ashton Drive is going to be soft. The guy over on Thorpe Avenue, that area is going to be all soft.
Dave, is this Thorpe Avenue or Thorpe Avenue Extension?
Thorpe Avenue Extension, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
just wanted
That's
to-
correct.
Yes.
It's that whole Tanglewood, Twin Court, Bradley, Meadowbrook, Thorpe Avenue, and even was that Sunset Terrace up above, so a lot of that water is coming down off of the complex. And that's the issue with this new guy today. He had a couple of his contractors in, they came in and said I got a call from the front office or the front desk, and they said there's two contractors here doing work on Thorpe Avenue. I was like, wait a minute, what are they doing? And it's a guy that's got water coming into his garage.
Showed me the other day where the.
No,
It's a new one.
no, that's a different one. It's a different one.
Yeah.
It's over on the corner of Sunset and Thorpe Avenue Extension. So his garage is kind of set into the hillside there. And he's got a foundation drain, or he doesn't have a foundation drain, I guess, and they're trying to get rid of the water. But the bottom of the foundation is below our ditches out on Thorpe. So, well, I came up with a solution. It's not the best solution, but it'll probably help him for now. But again, it goes back to that whole area has problems, and we all know that. And once we start working outside of the right of way, we can get the easements that we need, the licenses, MOUs, whatever we want to call it. But it's going to be difficult fixing all this stuff. And there's going to be so much of it, that's going to be difficult too.
So is your concerns about setting precedent, like helping one, then you gotta help everybody?
Well, yes, that's part of it. Because once we do one, we're going to be doing it all around town.
Right.
And, I only know of this 6 to 10 places right now. Those are the ones that are coming to me. But we know there's more than that out there. We were over on Pearl Avenue Extension the other day, and the guy was talking about how it used to drain all the time, and now it doesn't drain at all. And it's just all grown in, When stuff goes in, it works great, but then once it starts filling in with sediment and shrubs and trees and stuff, then it just doesn't work anymore. So that's just all I wanted to throw out there, was we can either take on doing all of it. It's going to cost us time, money, labor, materials, whatever. We can try to train the residents, but that, this is like a a one-time deal for them and, you know, just shovels aren't gonna cut it. You know, it's gonna take, you know, chainsaws and excavators and dump trucks to haul material and to bring stone in and stuff like that. So that's probably not really a viable option, is to leave it all on the residents.
Yep.
So it's probably gonna be, so I guess the main options are gonna be us doing some of it and then hiring people to do some of it too, because there's gonna be so much of it. We still need to take care of the roads. The guys have been really busy doing
So you're
that.
saying get a private contractor to go and do some of
To
the
help some do
the
some of
ones
it.
that are really bad.
Yes,
How do you set criteria? Like, I, I don't want to open Pandora's box, but if we did, I'd want to know that you had to have, you know, maybe there's 10 different ways that a ditch can be impaired by public waters, and you have to meet 5 of them to hit a threshold where we would even look at it. And that we only consider up to 5 or 10 projects per summer, and that's it. And anybody that doesn't get in, kind of like bidding every year when you're going for a grant, and you're putting in to have the town do your ditch, you'd have to show, you know, it'd be on a needs basis, and then I don't know if we develop some kind of a lottery system at that point to allocate resources, but we can't do it all at once. Everybody's gonna want it done. I'm of the opinion, as someone that, you know, we all have lived in other communities and own properties in other towns. No other town in Franklin County is gonna come clean your ditch for you. It would be abnormal for this area. I don't know if other larger municipalities like Milton or places in Chittenden County that might have access to more funding do that work on a more regular basis for private properties, or if.
Well,
Yeah.
we're doing it now. We're cleaning and maintaining a whole bunch of
Those are-
retention ponds,
Yeah, well, those are in the right of way.
that's
Yeah.
correct.
not all of them.
No, I thought your letter did a good job, Dave, kind of laying it out there. I don't know if that's something that would make sense to make public, if we haven't already done so, but I like that. The middle ground seems to make the most sense. And I guess I'm thinking the folks who came a few weeks back on Ashton, and I went and visited their property and looked at it, and it just, again, I don't know how many are like that, but it's the work that the town did in cleaning all of the rights of way. Did such a great job. All that water flows down
There's no
to
place
their
for it to
one
go.
property, and it's like a bottleneck, and it's just sitting there. So I don't know if we differentiate between folks where, you know, some criteria, 90% of the water coming onto their property is coming from the public right of way.
You'd have to hit.
Something like that, I don't know.
We had to do that on Ashton because the stormwater at the upper parts was
Yeah.
destroying the road up there. So we needed to clean all that up. Typically, you want to start down low and then work your
Yeah.
way up. But this one, I was trying to protect our road.
Well, you guys did all the work.
Yes.
Right away.
That's correct.
The thing, there's nothing more you could do, so
If
based on what we have right now.
If we were to entertain it, I'd want to know, like, what criteria would someone have to meet for us to consider it? How much in terms of dollars would we propose to do every year? How far do you think that would get us in terms of number of properties per year service? And then where is the money gonna come from?
Yep. We-
Like,
Definitely need some kind of a priority list and something that says, yes, we'll do this one, and maybe no, we don't do that one. I don't know what those details would be at this point.
well, if someone came in and was told no, but we could tell them, hey, you know, there's just so many properties ahead of you that are worse. We only have this number of dollars a year. We think that, you know, just by order of elimination, we'll get to you 3 years from now or whatever it is. Like, I would either want to do absolutely none of it or be able to straight face explain to every property owner in town, this is what we're doing, how, why, this is how we can help you or why we can't. Make it bulletproof.
And then we need to pull in the HOAs. Not everybody has an HOA.
So we take it, like, did Ashton Drive, and you clean it all out, so all those house water run down onto these people's property. I mean, you know, it's just like digging if you're digging a ditch on your farm and you get to your fence and you stop the ditch and the rest of it's this high, you're not amounting to nothing unless your neighbor lets you go down on there, drain the water off.
Well, I guess what stuck with me is that there was a ditch there, and multiple property owners over probably a couple of decades at least have let it go to heck and haven't maintained it properly. I think it would be just as lawful, and no, I'm not advocating for it, but it would be just as lawful to say that was put in as part of a permit. It's a conveyance device that's on private property owners. You need to either form an HOA and have your neighbors help you pay for that expense. Maybe there's a middle ground in where we develop these criterion, some kind of budget every year, and then as part of us doing the work, you're making an agreement to uphold it in perpetuity. And we're never going back. Like, I think that should be part of it in a lot of instances. If we're gonna go clean your ditch out, I mean, we're not coming back in 10 years to do it again. You know what you have now, you know what it's gonna cost. You need to take annual maintenance very seriously, and if you don't, and all of a sudden the next time we pave the road and come through and we're evaluating it, if it's filled up again, it's gonna be on you. As part of the agreement, I think every time we
But
enter.
isn't that where they are now? That's where they are.
Yeah,
part
we're
of it.
gonna get them back
Where they
to,
are now, so I'm trying to get in my head why. I mean, at what point does it flip from being a private matter to being a public matter?
well, that's where those criteria would have to come in.
Also part of it too is a new homeowner that bought it 2 years ago. A lot of them might not know about these HOAs and agreements. So that's just a thing that none of us can control.
And
I think
that'll
that's
be,
been part of the confusion.
that would be between them, their realtor and their,
No, I don't blame you. I understand. Yeah.
that's,
It's just
I hate
it's
to
still
hear,
okay.
like, I didn't know. No one told me.
Yeah.
I've never sold a property in a development like that without researching every Mylar and sitting down with my client, going over exactly what their obligations could be. I've pulled together meetings with zoning administrators to go over past permits. I mean, if nobody wants to do that, and someone's being essentially, for lack of a better word, screwed, they need to take that up with someone's errors and emissions insurance or title insurance or whatever it looks like. But we can't go in collectively as the town and spend. I wouldn't want to spend more than,
a lot of money.
yeah, it's
So there's
great.
no end,
There's no end to it.
because it starts way up on top of the hill and it goes all the way to the left.
So one of the biggest concerns of keeping these passages clear is the impairment to the road or the effect on the road, right?
Yep.
So that's the major criteria, like, if it's damaging the road, then we have an obligation to keep the road, or protect the road, and protect the road, so then we have to do something, like, you know.
Well, that and like, like when that person came in and said, you guys cleaned out all your ditches and now all of a sudden I have all this water. If there was no ditch originally there and we caused that, I think you already would have been there to fix it. The fact that there's already a ditch there that just hasn't been maintained, that gets into a gray area as into whose fault that. And all we've ever done for people in the past is allow them to purchase material like culverts at the town expense as a way of lowering the cost of them doing the work themselves. I can go either way on it. Like, I can see how someone can't afford it, even though it needs to be done yesterday. And there's no funding available to them, and I could see why 90% of the town wouldn't want to pay for issues on 10% of properties. So I don't know. It's the whole stormwater discussion on a smaller scale.
Yeah,
It's gonna take another, and exactly what you're saying, I'm just gonna try to flip it a little bit. And again, I'm just throwing these out here, but in kind of like what Jack said, you know, if on his property, and say it's not his property, but it's the town's setting up a stormwater system, right? Which is what we have. And if that stormwater system, the public comes and ends right at my land and dumps all along, I guess I'm just wondering if the public has some responsibility for that.
Well, as you're describing every cross culvert, yeah.
There's also been some folks that I've talked to, and I know Dave's talked to the same people that have just said, I'm gonna rip it out then. It's on my property, I'm gonna rip it out. And then my response is, please don't do that. How do you think it's gonna make it better?
Rip
But just like the culvert or ditch in their yard, like our culvert in the yard or pipe in the yard. I'm just giving you some actual public feedback on the matter.
that one's a unique situation.
Yeah,
So one on Thorpe Avenue.
Yeah.
So if that
Yeah.
guy rips that culvert out, it's on his land, right? He's got an excavator in there ripping out the culvert, he might as well make a ditch to go through, because the water's still gonna be there, right?
Yep.
That's a good reason why they might not.
I'm thinking of a couple on the farm shore that have a significant volume of water events. And I just see it pouring out of our cross culvert every year. And the person deals with it because there's no other option at this point.
And it's dirty water.
It is very dirty water. What, it looks like a Mississippi every time. That all goes down to the lake, and I know you're doing a feasibility study with grant money on how to infiltrate some of that.
Are there other questions that we have that Dave could hopefully try to track down and help us make decisions? Like, I mean, one I would have is just, I mean, how many properties do you think we're talking about? You know,
Yeah,
and I
that's-
know that's hard.
It's hard to quantify.
Yeah.
Once that service becomes available,
Well, that's what I mean.
I
Depending on what we do.
I got 1,000 foot of private ditch that's backing up in the my yard. I'd love to have the town come down and clean that up.
Yeah.
You know,
Don't forget to stop at 407 Patton Prospect.
everybody's gonna,
Yeah.
everybody's got it, you know?
V-Trans, what is, V-Trans would tell you that's too bad. I've got a lot of volume of water coming off of the into a right of way on Route 78. The culverts aren't graded right, the ditch on the side of the road's not graded right. I have asked to redo it. They tell me to get a permit and submit an engineered plan. I told them to do it. They told me to go away. I said, no, it's not impacting the road. We're not touching it. I mean, I've had it back up I've had it freeze up 15 catch basins because the outlet's not open because the receiving culvert at the very end of it's not graded properly. I've asked to have that culvert replaced at my expense and been told that they're not touching it. And then when I offered to do it, they told me they'll give me a permit at my expense, but I need to engineer a plan that shows the grades and I need to have a stamp. So if that's how V-Trans operates, if we're gonna deviate from that, hey, it better be with some precedent.
I've had to, on my farm, I got 7 culverts coming out that interstate dumping. And I've just gone along on my own dime and ditched along their fence. And put it to the different way the land slopes, yeah, I'd do that myself.
Yeah, if you
You
weren't,
weren't
in-
fill up with sand out of the dump trucks, that all washes down.
and there's so many issues, like, look at that ditch over there. We technically have a 50-foot buffer on either side of it because it was flagged as a class 2 wetland when we had this property looked at. How many times are we gonna get in trouble because of what looked to be a ditch, what we know is a ditch, because it is a man-made ditch? How many times is the state gonna come and point the finger at us and say, you needed a permit, that's not permissible, you need to put that back the way it looked? Like, it's a big can of worms.
It's always better to ask for forgiveness.
You're probably not wrong, especially as a town, but
Just
it's a
play
theory,
dumb
though.
and, that's how I got away with it.
When you're gonna say that, sit a little further.
I'm gonna-
Is it a sentence?
The state doesn't do anything to help any of this stuff.
We've,
For the way you're on your
yeah,
own.
we've definitely.
So if I wanna crap on them, I'm gonna crap on them. Maybe.
No, I meant
somebody will
the-
listen and get
I
it
just
together.
meant to ask for forgiveness later.
Oh.
Don't say that in the mic.
But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, so where to go from here? I mean, do we just, decide we're going with
we gotta give
option
Dave some options.
1 or, yeah, or do we look at it?
So like, so on Ashton Drive, say you gotta clean out that swale, and there's kind of like a swale there, maybe some stone in it. Like, even if, how long is that? Like 200 feet?
It's maybe 150. Yeah,
150 feet, so even if you laid mats with a small excavator and just, you could do it in a day.
Oh, yeah.
So
It wouldn't take long
even
at all.
$150 an hour, you'd be under $5,000 with the trucking to get that out of there.
Yeah.
Like private company.
But we'd also have to go on the other side of the hedge there and go behind
The glass
Portland
company.
Glass or whatever is over
Is
there.
that still town or is that city? Really close to the line.
I think that is still town. I'm pretty sure. I would verify any of that before.
But I don't think we're talking like big numbers.
Not for that one.
But
No.
Jack did bring up a good, or Brendan kind of like, at what point is it considered wetland? Is it considered wetland at all, or?
If it's hydraulically connected to a basin that drains the Lake Champlain, It's a class 2.
But you gotta be able to maintain it if the stormwater's causing.
If it's a permitted stormwater permit. If it's I've got an old maid and I've got a ditch on a property line that someone dug out with a backhoe that feeds water down the back of my property down in McQuam along the city's fence with a water treatment line. That was I know who dug it. The guy raised me and he told me when he did it. And that got flagged as a class 2 and I had to fight. And in the end, I had to agree to a 50-foot buffer that I don't follow it, state of Vermont. If you're listening, that is a ditch. I don't care what you say.
You know, they're not listening because they all go home for it.
Well, they're working from home. They shut their computer at 4:30.
I mean, on that one on Ashton again, and again, there's probably others like it, others certainly that are not, but 95% of probably the water that's on there is draining directly from the public, you know, right away, that's transporting the water down from.
So does that
And it's-
have an HOA?
We did look into that and they do not have an HOA. And you know, it's the people upgrading it are the ones saying, I don't have a problem, so
Yeah,
why do I
they've
need
got
to
a
pay
nice
for
ditch.
anything?
Yeah, yeah.
And then I found an old document from around 2000 where the developer is saying, well, yeah, it's wet down there, but they should have known before they bought it from me, kind of thing, you know?
Come on, developer would never say that.
No, they're all good.
So what if we made the criteria that it has to be mostly public water and define mostly with a number that's somehow calculable or easy to understand. No HOA, property is a standalone property without the help of any neighbors that are contributing this water. And then no obvious evidence of the ditch within a zoning file or a Mylar. Because in my mind, if it shows up on a Mylar that it's there, and the grade on the maps and the plans all show that it's a bottom of the hill and there's a ditch there that was as part of a zoning approval. If that's not maintained, that's a private issue. As far as I'm concerned. I mean, maybe I could be convinced otherwise, but it's again, it goes back to this whole stormwater discussion. The only reason we're talking about these ponds and how we're gonna charge fees and not charge fees and what we're gonna build first is because the state's telling us to. If we didn't have an order from upstairs to do all this work, I wouldn't entertain going on private properties. I'd tell these folks to form HOAs and get some kind of financing instrument to fund it. I mean, the maximum I would do is the town would be coming up with a revolving loan fund.
I was thinking kind of along the same lines while you were speaking about the risk involved with going in with an excavator into a muck hole to clean it up. Just I think that the state, there's agencies in the state that watch that stuff pretty closely. But if we had some kind of, I'm just thinking out loud, but if we had some kind of a grant or a loan program where their contractor did like this, the town has no liability. If we go in there and start doing stuff, we assume that liability.
So we hire private.
So we wouldn't hire any.
I think if you hire
That's
your
a steal.
insurance,
So if you had a grant program where someone could say, okay, you come up with your special, I've got no HOA to help me finance this. It's not an obvious thing that I should have seen when I bought the house. It's a ditch on the side. I never thought twice. No one told me. And it's all public water.
Yeah, and it's impeding the public.
Well, it's just the public water is causing private property damage. Then I think what Jeff's saying, and I think that's a real good idea, is we'll give up to, depending on the volume of water or whatever it is, maybe we have a scale, but $5,000 or $10,000 max. You've got to submit bids. We treat it like a grant program where you've got to get estimates and permits and approvals ahead of time. Then we reimburse. You know, maybe you come in, you submit your invoice when the work's done, and contractors will work with us in that respect, knowing that we'll pay the bill if the work's done properly. Maybe in some cases, we demand that whatever work we're giving a grant on is designed with a stamp like the state would if you were doing it yourself. And we come up with some kind of grant program through the stormwater utility, and at no point do we accept responsibility or take on any additional rights away. I think that would have
to
legs.
sign a sheet of paper saying that, you know.
I now understand this is here. I will make sure it's maintained.
So how many homes in Ashton got it?
Oh,
20,
dozens,
something
yeah.
like that.
20?
at the most, I
I'm
think.
trying to think of the whole circle.
So how much, trying to think, how many $50? About $1,000 we get out of there, right? In stormwater fees, and you can take that money from that development and put it towards fixing that problem.
Take you forever.
Huh?
Take you
So
forever.
if you waited every year,
Well, I
it'll
mean,
take a while.
what do you figure that one's gonna cost?
I figured we'd be in and out of there in half a day.
Right.
But that's one case.
No, I'm just,
And that's if we're doing it. That's not if they're doing it.
that's one way to, where you can kind of justify
Oh.
that I'm paying for it. There's 20 homes there, $50 a piece. That's what.
I don't understand why a private landowner is not in a position to pay someone half a day's labor to go in and do that. Like, why is that? Like, why one? Like, it's a couple $1,000s.
Not even.
If we did a grant program, I would make it income sensitive too.
Well, to do all the stuff you're talking about, it's gonna be 2 more people's salary. Keep that thing going.
I'm just thinking just the two criteria.
You're not gonna
where
get that many.
The water's coming from the public system, like whatever, 90% of it, whatever that is. And by not doing the work, it's impeding the public water system. I mean, I'm just thinking of the public water system, not someone who's got too much water on their land because it's rolling from a brook or down the hill, but it's coming directly from the public, rights of, ditches that we dug and that we have on with the express purpose of moving the water. And then to Jack's example that I was kind of going to before, if Jack did all this work on his land to divert all the land and it came to the border, the property line where I
So you
am,
gotta send.
and it dumps on my land,
The rest of the
stinks for
guy's
me.
next property, the ditch stops right there. I've had that happen.
Yeah.
I have to go to the neighbor and say, can I go 200 feet down through your backyard to get the water off my farm? He doesn't have to say yes, but
he doesn't want to.
But that happens all the time. I mean, my neighbor put a ton of water into my ditch, and that's why my ditch backs up. What do? When you had access to the ditch, can't stop them from putting water in it.
That's a bigger piece of land though. All right.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a huge tile outlet that drains like 35 acres in a little ditch.
Yeah, in some of these places, the water backs up and it saturates the soils and then it starts getting into basements and
Yeah.
causes foundation problems.
It's cascade.
That- So that's the benefit to the homeowners, keeping it clean, keep that water flushing through.
Yeah. Al, do you have a?
Well, I think you had, in preparation for this meeting, I went through 10 years of old MS4 documents from the state.
Did anyone else do that, by the way?
No, but I'm going to leave it with,
Val?
going to leave it with Julie. So several things that come to my mind. One of the things is that the state does recognize the water from the mountains coming through and affecting other people's property. You ditch, the next guy is affected. They talked about it, but they never dealt with it. And so there are openings just in terms of what the state saw and didn't do there. The other thing that worries me is that what you're all talking about is reasonable in the short term. But like we talked at the last meeting, this is a larger problem from the hills, the water coming down and from the hills down to the lake. So to your point of the water coming through fast on a ditch, we have to slow that water down before it gets to the lake. So you've got a lot of problems, and all I think that whatever you want to decide is fine. But pass it through the lawyers because it's so complicated that the changing rules that we talked about last week, 2 weeks ago, and the technology, and then along with the long range, we want to fix 60 years of mistakes going forward. Hopefully this will work for another 50 years, whatever we do, both short-term and integrated into the long-term fix, that it's going to take a number of people to study and then the legal people to say whether we're within the law or not, and then move forward. So what Dave is proposing to help short-term seems to be reasonable. But be careful about what you're thinking in the long-term and how this will impact long-term issues.
Well, I was listing options, but I wasn't proposing anything at this point. It's all just for discussion.
So in the agricultural sector, there was a lawsuit brought forth down in Madison County. And the farmer was held responsible for the water that went downhill. And they were told to stop putting water onto their neighbor's land.
But is that fair?
It's set precedent.
There was an egregious amount of damage.
It's set
caused to
precedent.
that.
Never has been done before in the law, but now it's been done.
Yeah, I guess from my own value point of view, we are a community. We've made tons of mistakes over the last 60 years. And I just think that if we put it to a vote, the majority of the people, I think, would say we've got to help everybody resolve these problems. We can't let the courts stick it on one farmer because he's at the end of the slope,
The top of the stuff.
top of the slope.
Bushy?
Where's the homeowner?
If you wouldn't mind, just, you gotta, so it's recorded, thank you.
So in a lot of these cases, where does a homeowner responsibility take over? Sounds like you guys are going on properties that eventually drains to the town highway. The town should only be in maintaining the side of their road. So going on other people's property, that's the homeowner's responsibility in most cases. Now, we get people in renting pumps because they got water in their basement. Are we going to, the town, we're gonna start going around to everybody's house to start bailing them out? I wouldn't think that's right. The homeowner should be responsible for some of their issues. If they bought a property where the ditches are filling up, water's overflowing, coming to their properties, they gotta do something about it. I don't see where the town should be responsible for those issues. That's my opinion.
And I think when, there's no end, right?
Oh, it's just gonna
Once you
keep
start,
going
there's no end.
Once you do this for somebody, you've got 10 other people lined up, they've got their hand up.
Mhm.
And it's not gonna end. So, used to be the town always maintained their ditches on the side of their roads. And that was it. And that seemed to work for years. This stormwater setup, you know, if they got it for a housing development, the developer that put it in should be liable, or made everybody in that development chip in and pay their fair share if they want to keep it going. Otherwise, these fees are just going to keep going up and up and up. So, that would be my 2 cents for it.
Thank you. Yeah, that, well said.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hard part. I'm trying to wrap my head around again is, everything you just said, you know, private stuff comes on, it's your responsibility. I'm just wondering about, and I don't know how many properties there are. Maybe there's 100 of them, which would be too many. But again, I guess if I had my property and the town went up above me, put in a public system, done a public system that drains in one spot onto my property. I guess I'd wonder if they would be responsible for that.
We would go see Howard and get a little estimator.
Yeah, well, that's that too, right? We even know what to send it to. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure that out.
Over it's at.
Yeah,
That's all we've ever
I'm
done.
trying to wrap my head around just how many properties might be like that. And again, I'm not talking about the ones like, well, it kind of drains on my property a little bit, but I mean like where, I don't know if it's 20 houses up there. I think it's something like that, or 15, 20 houses, but 15, 20 houses and there's one system that literally a big circle that comes down and drains at one spot. Do we, the town, have a responsibility to help that one person there? And I don't know the answer because I don't know how many there are. I don't know what kind of.
I don't know that it
Impressive.
matters how many people they are in terms of figuring out whether it's something we should do or not.
What's the legal department say?
I think if they tell you you could do it if you wanted to, and you didn't that. I'm not like,
Well, should we?
If we did it-
should we give them a year? That way they're.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Yeah, that's right. If this, go through it, make sure you've got,
Yeah.
you know, like an easement's going out to my.
like, you'd have to tell me that it was all public water, that it was causing damage, that there's no HOA or other system set up to pay for it, that, and then they'd have to go through and do a process of delineating to make sure there's no wetlands. They'd have to work, I mean, any water that they convey is gonna get dumped onto someone else. So at some point, every property that we touch is gonna involve multiple properties. Unless they all somehow drain directly into, they all got the daylight somewhere. So you touch one, now we're going behind Portland glass. Where does it go after Portland glass? Then it ends up in the city. Now the city's mad because they got something backing up in the street or whatever.
Yeah.
If we did do it, we'd have to have a set of best practices like the state has for road constructions and A76. We'd have to mandate that in order to apply for a grant or to get us to do it, you'd have to sign that you would install check dams at a riprap every however many feet, and that you keep them there. And then if you didn't keep them there and you somehow removed them to make it easier to mow, that we could recoup our money through the form of filing a lien. I don't know. It's extremely complicated. Like, I get it where Brian's sitting and I hear someone that comes in and says, oh, all this water, you cleaned the ditch and now my yard's flooded. And I think, well, maybe there's a case there. And then you walk out of the room, you get an hour to think about it, and you end up thinking exactly like Howard.
Yeah, that's.
So that's where,
Wrap your head around though.
So how, just by cleaning the ditches out, how did you increase the amount of water?
Well, there was less resistance.
Right, it just comes fast.
I mean, we reseeded it.
So it just comes
did you check
fast,
dam them?
but it's still the same amount of
We
water.
did put some, yeah. You know, if you got a certain slope, you gotta put a check in.
So it's just carrying that big rain.
Isn't it? Before my time, it was in a high school.
It's been.
It was just a room in a high school. And that's $1.5 million. It's insane.
Except for the really dry years.
Oh, cool. It's nothing like this.
So where should we go from here? I mean, we should getting some more information, could be legal, could be numbers, and I'm just curious if we had, I like Brendan's idea, and again, just being very, very strict on the criteria, you know, where it's almost 100% the public water system draining it. You know, so something like that, not just some of the water comes on, because we're obviously not here to do everyone's ditch, but if that ditch is a terminus and then goes directly only onto your property, I just feel like that's something we should take into consideration, that's all.
It also largely depends on
Very legit.
segue to the
Take
future.
something like
Yeah.
Tanglewood.
ordinance. Yeah.
The Tanglewood runs out of Tanglewood over to Meadowbrook, to Potter's Avenue, it's just going, I mean, you could put a whole canal system in over there, probably still couldn't get it dried out. And after it leaves all in, it's going down to somebody else.
That's the thing, is that, like Brennan said.
We could make it go,
Fix it
we
one
could fix
spot, it's just gonna go
Tanglewood,
down to the
and
next spot.
Meadowbrook and all those places, and
Then we're flooding the industrial.
then the guy down the street's gonna come in next and say he's flooded.
Yeah, it's definitely a global kind of issue. It's not just a.
Do we have any legal liability if we didn't do something? You know,
Not for the
we have a
agreement.
public water system that drains and it goes to one property and dumps on a private property.
You have
Do
two
we have any
issues.
legal liability?
You
for
have two
that?
issues. The amount of pollution, I mean, there's a correlation of water dumping going through the system when it hits Lake Champlain. So you have the total TMDL, I forget what it stands for.
Total maximum daily
Right,
load.
that actually, so there are legal consequences to that. That's the first thing now. The second one slipped my mind, but yes, there are legal consequences. In terms of MS4, they do talk about private property and town responsibilities, and the state talks about its responsibilities in enforcing the town. So there are responsibilities to the town as well as to the private homeowner, and everybody to the lake. I guess my question is, at what time, rain falls on private land. At what point does it become public, wet water?
Check.
Let's see. I moonlight as a lawyer.
I think it's waters of the state when, depending on what administration is pushing, how it's defined, but you know, I think under Obama, catch basins under your eaves where you caught your eve water, actually technically was waters of the state.
Really?
And then also ponds that weren't connected but could be connected underground were considered public waters because of the connectivity
To the lake or federal water?
to each other or to a surface water. And then there's navigable waters, which was what the original intent was,
Right.
which has just grown. But so, I mean, waters of the state are public waters, are publicly managed waters. So it's a very fluid fluid, but it changes all the time. So I don't think rain falling on private land it has anything to do with public until it starts to get manned. If it get to a pools into something.
Well, we've already got a stormwater ordinance where if it falls on your roof and in your driveway, you've got to pay. Right? That's what we've done.
Like.
So you pay them to dump it in somebody else with their stormwater fee. When you're exonerated, you pay the fee, now your water can go. But by collecting these fees, now these people are expecting the town to do something. So if you didn't collect fees to start with, you wouldn't have these other things popping up with them. So.
Nah, I feel people would still come. Well before the ordinance and the utility ever existed, it'd be every wet summer, there'd be 3 or 4 people that every time we changed a cross culvert and brought an 18-inch to a 24,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, oh, there's way more water. And it's not way more water. It's the same it's always been.
Yeah.
But
The main roads are there. People put these housing developments in. They built what would appear to be a decent lot. Now years have built up extra sediment and they don't want to deal with it. Well, I always want to put the blame on somebody else, have them pay for it. It's the responsibility of the homeowner in a lot of cases. Where it all boils back. And you hate to see it that way, but that's reality. Like you were saying, if the cellar's flooding every time it rains, you do something about it. You come down to the town and say, yeah, my cellar flooded, it's your water. So just let your cellar flood, take some action, get it to stop. But then those people, like Ashton Drive, if they clean on their property and the guy below, it's going down there. Or the other neighbor on the other side. It's a mess.
Yes.
Do FEMA guidelines help give us insight? I'm thinking now of the major rainstorms on the coastal areas where they step in and they do everything for the homeowners to try to help restore or get them back into their homes. Is it worthwhile looking at how they look at catastrophes, managing water, to give us some guidance? I'm not saying to adopt them, I'm just saying thought processes.
could we
Pardon?
could we get credit for any work? Like, say we did a grant program and someone went out and did work. Could we take credit for that under our MS4 permit?
Well, we would have to calculate how much phosphorus would be used, if any, and whatever we have to pay.
Even the flow restoration. Even the FRP instead of the phosphorus, the PCP.
Yeah.
I know everything when Emily was explaining it. It's all a game of credits. You know, she talked us into taking over a bunch of defunct permits that we had no interest in taking over by saying we could take credit for them. And that it would somehow help us with MS4. I don't know if that's an argument to make or something to consider when talking about this. If we can go do a bunch of small scale projects on private roads, if that somehow gives us the ability to tell the state we're not gonna do giant ones. And we're meeting some kind of legal threshold, kind of like a loophole. I don't know. I go back and forth. I think like when we talk about a half day worth of work that will cost less than $3,000 and somebody's got private land, like come on. But
Yeah, I'm just interested in getting, I mean, there's probably no way to get a number, but how many properties I'm trying to see that are at the, you know, where the vast majority of the issue is just strictly from the public water system.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or it's not just passing through, but it's actually terminating there. I mean, I can't imagine there'd be too many. I mean, I'm hearing, you know, certainly from Jeff and everyone and Mr. Bushy, you know, most of it's got to be on the private landowner. I mean, we got to start there, but I'm just that tipping that thing of if almost all of the issue is strictly coming because it's water dumping from the public system directly on their property, and I feel like the town should at least consider looking at
I mean, go count,
correcting that. I just,
go drive around the ditches and go count how many,
that's what I mean. I
how
don't,
many foundation drains and gutters are dated.
well,
That's part of it too, yeah.
I'm wondering if Dave might know. He would know better than I would when I'm driving around.
No, I'm just saying.
And so I don't know if there's a dozen or if there's 100 of these. I'm looking for ones just where, again, the problem is almost entirely because of the public system. That's all.
What you're describing, is anybody that property that receives the crossing, all the water that comes out of that is from a public ditch and they laid it on their property.
You also got, like you said, if you've got these guys with their roof drain, their gutters and their downspouts that go into the system, and then you see the little white pipe sticking out in our ditch. There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
Well,
just
there
about
was-
every one.
Yeah, there was one on Ashton Drive that was plugged. We cleaned it out and just see the water coming
Yeah.
out of there.
Yeah, I know years ago, we did one up there on Sunset. The guy's basement was full right to the rafters in February. And Kenny went in there and we were digging there and we hit the end of his cellar drain and it was all full of roots. And the minute we pulled that pipe off of there, it was in the middle of February one time. You know, we had no idea what we were doing because there was no layout. We were just digging up there on Thorpe Avenue and trying to find out what was going on. This freaking water was running right down the cellar stairs from the, what do you call that thing outside there? The trap door that goes just like a waterfall. But, you know, technically we shouldn't have done that. We did, so
I don't think that it's evil to help people.
no,
I think if you make it your policy, you're gonna you're gonna take care of everyone's problems.
you're right,
They are gonna become your problems.
yeah.
And you gotta be careful what you sign up for.
Yep.
Yep. So where do we want to go from here then? This is a tough one. Obviously, it links to some more ordinance, which we're going to talk about next, and all the big projects. These are the little projects.
That's
So do we have any current like
Take care,
swales
take
that
care.
are
Thank you. Have a good night, Jerry.
like deteriorating the road a little bit?
We took care of one on Ashton Drive. You know, I know a big storm will fall short floods. And it's because of the cross culverts or flood. And there's nothing down there to slow the water down. Other places,
So do we just do it as a case by case basis? Because technically, if you look at it, all that water that came down Ashton Drive, I bet you probably 80% of it came from private landowners. Look at the square footage of the road based, I get it, it's impervious, but so aren't rooftops and driveways and all the underground water.
Yeah, there's a culvert there on High Street that comes across too from We've got Quarry.
Yeah.
Quarry. So that water's coming down there too. So it's not just the actual.
Potter's out. In the back there.
You know, is this something big enough where we have to set like a policy or how we go about it, or do we just do it like a case by case basis? It doesn't seem like there's a bunch of them we need to do.
You open yourself up to liability because everybody's gonna equate their issue to whichever one we decided was worthy. But there's no criteria in place. You've got nothing.
You've got other criteria.
You have
That
to
would be the
build up
policy.
the ability to say no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that one, that unique one there on Fort Ave. Extension.
We break policy all the time.
Yeah, there's,
Like, that's the item that it happens every day, like. And people gotta say it out loud, but. So do we really need a policy if there's only a dozen of these things? You know, well, it's just
It's a
like
growing
anything,
list.
right? Even if you identify them all today, next year when we get a heavy rain, there could be 10 more potentially,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, the ones right below it.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, like, where do you stop, you know?
It's really good like that.
I mean, if we had unlimited time and money, I mean, I'd love to
Yeah.
have, just know what we're looking at exactly, you know, how many are like this?
I think it's also, I mean, but it's also philosophical in the sense that it's private land with private landowners, like that is like what business does the public sector have going in and doing that, right? So, I mean, there is helping people, but there's also a line needs to be drawn. And historically, it sounds like the right of way has been in the line that's been drawn. We work in the right of way. And we don't work on private land. Now we're talking about changing that. Because there's a few things that need to be done. And I think it's a slippery slope, so.
but tomorrow I've got a meeting with the Chittenden County RPC and all the MS4 community down there. I'm gonna pose this question to them about what they do on the fire.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And that's tomorrow. I decided to keep in touch with them because up here in Franklin County, there's only two of us that are in this force. Down there, you know, there's 8 or 9 or 10. And we're all dealing with the same stuff. I've already talked to them about other things. So I'm just gonna stay plugged in with that. Yeah. And keep Julie plugged in with it too. So I was asking that question.
See if Bill join us in Montpelier this winter to fight for some stormwater money to fix all the problems they tell us we have.
I did talk to Senator Brock last week, and for what it's worth, it is going to be at the top of their agenda next time they go into session about helping localities fund this project. Not that that means anything, but it's just food for thought.
Okay, so on this particular one, maybe Dave, you got that meeting. I mean, maybe I need to drive around with you and look and just see, so.
Yeah.
So we're saying the same thing. Because again, what Jeff said, 100%, I just worry about the person who's, the water's almost all coming from the public. System that's set up, that's all. Well, I don't
know clear
maybe
cut
not.
criteria on how to do it. Like, is it, I'm thinking of, let's say, a name, Dan Handy's cross culvert that pours water onto his front yard until it backs up enough to the point where it goes under his driveway and goes down the lake onto other properties. Like, at what point is that water public when you point to it all comes from the same fields that are owned by the same people? Your problems with that guy, the fact that it goes through our road is nothing to us.
But
Like,
where did that one go before his house?
I hear you, and that's where it becomes, who do we help, if anybody, how, why, and on what basis do you tell everyone else no? And if you can't clear cut it, then we're all gonna end up in court
It's
getting
just
told
like-
every other day.
All this flooding that we had in, Montpelier buried. So now, what are they gonna do? Buy the whole town out so they don't? It's gonna happen again, maybe next year, maybe not for another 100 years. But Montpelier, Barry, those towns have been on that river for years. And they keep talking about spending all this money to try to flood-proof those towns. There's no way they can do that. That's the river. Mother Nature always wins. Always. Never been beat yet.
It's just because we haven't spent enough money.
Right. Right. But I
Dave,
still think it
it
could
could be hypothetical, right? If, again, I'm thinking about Ashton Drive. If those ditches on the outside of the road were filled in, what would happen to the water? Would it all go to that one house, or would it just become everyone's problem to a lesser degree?
If they were all filled in.
If that ditch was, the ditch on the outside of the road on Ashton, if they were all just filled in, if they weren't there, the water would just go on everyone's
Water would just-
property.
Probably just go right down the road.
just like it used to before there was houses, it would just sheet down.
Yep. But
It
but my
would-
point is, because it's in,
It all drains towards
It always
the road,
go
and all
one-
go back.
yeah, I'm sorry. It was just stuck on me, just looking at
So
that.
before Ashton Drive, what was down there, some wood?
Yeah,
Vacant
like you
piece
said,
of
if-
ground.
what's
Water
really-
ran through, nobody cared.
yep, if there's no people there, it's not
Right.
flood,
Right,
Right.
just like,
I mean,
just like Ash, or what's the other one there, Tanglewood and all that over there. That was all hayfield. Farmer had it ditched, you know. And he didn't care. He had it took care of it. Go stick all them houses in there, and all of a sudden, everybody's got a problem.
yep. Back on for next time? Water.
I'll be interested to see what you hear.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. Yeah.
Maybe we should do it like, you know, we get a school bus and we all jump on and drive around, check this all out.
That's actually not a bad idea.
No.
I'm serious. I mean, just so we're all looking at the same types of properties.
I still think you're gonna.
I'd rather pay staff to take pictures and present them to the board members.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you want to be presented with the level of anger that me and Dave
Yeah.
have been facing in person.
Well, hockey started, so I'll be available in May for that. During the weekend. All right, we'll close that for now. Hopefully we'll get an update in 2 weeks from now, and we can move over to the stormwater ordinance here, which we have on here. I'll just start by saying I think I've got a copy of the ordinance. We've talked about stormwater ordinance, stormwater fees. We've talked about that probably in aggregate several hours over the past several months of meetings. I definitely want to turn to Jeff first because he wasn't able to make the last meeting. I'm sure Jeff's probably read the minutes or watched the meeting, and like to definitely hear
Did
from
not
Jeff.
watch the
And then you did not watch the meeting?
I came out of my illness and have been extremely busy.
Gotcha, which
No.
makes sense. Definitely want to start with Jeff if you'd like to hear your thoughts, and then we can all take a turn or so. I mean, I'd like to avoid doing 2 hours of talking about the same thing because they're all great points, and make a decision either we can vote to change the ordinance and put it on and start going, or we can just continue to look at it or do a combination of those things.
So why are we talking about the ordinance?
Just, I guess from historical look here, I think whatever it was, a month or so ago, there was a motion to amend the ordinance. It passed 3-1. After the fact, we realized, it's an ordinance change. We have to do a different process if we're going to do that. So that's kind of where, and we talked about it a few times, and we have it on. And so we can go back and have that same vote, or we can.
So
talk about it a
we
little bit and move
we can
forward.
hash things out, but I think for me, I'm in the same spot I was in when I made that motion. And that spot is that I feel quite strongly that the current section 3 of the ordinance and how we fund this is not fair, not equitable, and puts the town in a position where we appear to be able to fix all the problems that the state and federal government are mandating us to fix on our own because of the level of money that we're raising through this fee structure. And from my perspective, it makes more sense to use different revenue streams that we already have existing, mainly the money that we gather from a townwide sales tax that is supposed to be used for infrastructure that would not affect property owners. It only affects people that spend lots of money in the town. And so I'm happy to make a motion to that effect, or we can talk about it, or there could be public comment on that. But I think that we need to put the town in a position where they're going to have to depend on state and federal money to do these projects. And not just raise money and build a big cache of money to do that. And that may make for some hard choices that the select board and the department heads will have to make when it comes to budgeting, but that's okay. I think it's more important that the town not appear to just be going out and raising fees to get money to address an issue that the solution to is hundreds of years away. I think that cleaning up Lake Champlain, that's what I do for my day job. I get it. But I also think that the removal, spending $3.5 million, $3 million, $5 million, whatever the number is, to remove 150 pounds of phosphorus a year from the pollution stream, if you will. Those numbers are modeled numbers. They aren't actual numbers. They're based on a bunch of different things. And I think that money should not be spent by town tax, but property owners in the town shouldn't have to pay that money. I think that the state wants that done, and they're so gung ho and think the MS4 thing. The woman sitting in that chair the other night said that that's because of stream bank erosion. Nothing we're doing is going to fix stream bank erosion. Yeah. And I said, why don't we just fix stream bank erosion? They have 100% control over that. They can fix it whenever they want. They can put the stuff in to do that. They make the laws. They got the money. They're not interested in it. So I'm not interested in making the property owners of the town shell out $400,000 a year when we know we're not going to see a return on that money. In the cause that now we could address flooding issues. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about addressing phosphorus issues. I agree. So just for reference, we do a fireworks show on Bay Day. I have no idea what the weight of those fireworks is, but it's several hundred pounds of fireworks, I'm guessing, theoretically. 10% of that's phosphorus. We're shooting it into the lake. So say you have 500 pounds of fireworks go off. You're putting 50 pounds of phosphorus into the lake.
It's really phosphorus in those?
Huh? Oh yeah, there's a bunch of all those colors are heavy metals.
I just show up to watch.
So I'm not dishing on fireworks. I'm saying that there's other ways to deal with phosphorus other than spending a ton of money. And I don't mind spending a ton of money. Let's use money that doesn't have a face on it or an address on it. Because it's not, I understand public good. I get the public good. It's not the public good. I don't see it that way. In this instance, I don't see the public good. I see certain HOAs benefiting, and eventually in 200 years, people that own properties on the lake may see something, may not. My guess is not, because I think that the thing they don't talk about is legacy phosphorus in St. Albans Bay, which is the driver. Everything else is minor compared to the hundreds of tons of phosphorus that are laying in the bottom of that lake. So my position is that we should unhinge the ERU fee, that fee from this and fund it at a lower level. I'm not saying get rid of staff. I'm saying make it so the state and federal government have to provide money to implement these projects. They're the ones that want it done. And if nothing else, if we did this, Montpelier would have to take notice that they need to fix this. We have everything in place. We have documents in place. We got projects in place. We need their money. So that's my position, and I guess that's about all I have to say.
Yeah, no, I'll say thanks, Jeff. I think I probably agree with 90+% of what you were saying. We in the main one, I know I've been saying, right, I'd love to have a stormwater utility that's set up, but it only moves when the state and federal government puts money into it, right? We put something in to, for staff to keep it up so we can, make sure we know what projects that we need to do, but that it moves when the state federal government puts it in. So I agree with you 100%. Just a couple points, and then I'll turn it over to everybody else. Looking at the stormwater fee, and I'm not looking at the amount, I'm looking at the percent. That roughly, and we talked about this last time, Brendan brought some numbers after scouring pages, but 34% of the stormwater utility fee is paid by by tax exempt entities. Like the city of St. Albans pays a tiny amount, but it's the railroad. The state of Vermont pays, what was it?
You want the numbers?
1,000 or something. Well, I'm more about just the percent. So wait, just in what my point right now, that stormwater fee, it's just that 34% of it comes from entities that wouldn't pay otherwise, and they wouldn't pay in the LOT as far as I know. The city of St. Albans, when I worked for the rec department, I would go and buy snacks for the kids for the day camp, and I had a card that said I'm purchasing for the city of St. Albans, and we got it sales tax free, right? No LOT, obviously there's no LOT way back then, but they wouldn't have been LOT and no sales tax. So I'm just saying, and the number here as a dollar amount of $166,000 comes from that. So I wish we could just put it all on that. Obviously we can't do that. So
So because we're raising money from people that wouldn't otherwise pay taxes, so that changes our perspective. There's a reason why they don't pay taxes.
Partly.
And
again, I'll turn it over in a second. Let me just finish. I just got a couple more points I just want to make. So we got it out there. Is that they're here helping, meaning, 2/3 of what it is coming from the town residents, basically. $50. I think I said this months ago. Slash that down, slash it down to $20. I think the city does $12, right? We slash that down drastically, we would be able to fund the stormwater utility, like to keep it up and running. It wouldn't get much done unless the state and federal government's putting money in. I'm for one, if they go years without putting money in, we just suspend the fee for a while. Just one more point on the ordinance. The way it is in that 3.1B says, I'm just going to quote it because it's only one sentence. The town select board shall have the authority to set and modify the user fee rates so that the total revenue generated by said charges and any other sources of revenue shall be sufficient to fund the town's stormwater program. And my only point bringing it up is I don't think we need to change the stormwater utility ordinance on here. We already have it in here that we could raise it from the user fee and or other sources of revenue. We could use LOT, we could use ARPA. So I guess my only thing to caution is if we take whatever it's gonna be, the 3 months, the 4 months to change the ordinance, and we take out the word user fee, that's fine. Then the only way to do it is with LOT. And even though LOT doesn't come from the taxpayers, but in a way, it's our money still, right? No matter where it came from, it's still our money that we can decide what to use on it. So it's not free money, necessarily, right?
But to me, it's faceless money.
It's what money?
Faceless.
Okay.
It doesn't, it's not tied to a physical address. It's just money the town gets from people spending money in the town. It's not tied to me or you or anybody else.
But when it comes in, now it's our money, right? It's our money as a town.
Correct.
To use on it.
On infrastructure.
And if we, and that's another thing, I wrote down my notes over here, trying to work out a formula. What if we use the user fees enough to pay for administrative and even in system maintenance? 60% of this year's budget that we have in 58.76% is capital expenditures. 50% of the total budget this year, 49.32% to be precise, is construction. And so as a way to look at this, what if we use the user fees just to administrate it? But when it comes to building a project, we have an argument now to use LOT because it's infrastructure, right? We could use it for all of it.
Well, the argument needs to be LOT, but state and federal funds.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't want.
Precisely. I don't think we, the town, should be looking at like, well, if they don't put any money, we're just gonna have.
There's a couple of, I'm gonna counter your points with a couple of points from a simple-minded person, but one is many of the businesses in St. Albans are already incurring the cost of they've put in stormwater systems. The church I attend has a stormwater system. It's all in, they maintain it, they keep it up at their expense. They're presumed to be managing their stormwater. And now they're getting level of fee on top of the fact that they're already managing that. So they're basically paying double. They're paying to maintain their system and they're paying into the fund to deal with people that didn't pay to keep their system up, essentially. And then the second point I was going to make was that the private landowner, unless you're a direct beneficiary of those funds, still have to do all the maintenance on your own property regarding stormwater. Clean your ditches, do this, do that at your own cost. So then we're coming in over the top of the private citizen and saying, oh, but you need to pay. Right now it's $50. 2 years from now, could be anything. It's whatever we set it. Could be 10.
Yep.
But what I have seen in my short time on the select board is we don't like cutting. We are adverse to saying we're going to spend less. And the way that we can force ourselves to spend less is to remove a funding mechanism that makes it easy to spend more. And it would force us to rely on state and federal funds to do the unfunded mandate work of supporting MS4 permits, which we have to do. But the pace at which we have to do it at is definitely open for debate. And to me, if you're going to level, so businesses pay in more than the individual. 5-10 years down the road, put in these projects, the state's going to come back on us. We ask the question, they're going to come back and say, we changed our standard. Those are no longer. So now we're going to spend it again.
That's what I was thinking, we can't control that,
You can't
I do
control
want to
that,
state,
but
just for everyone in here, right? We're mandated to do this. I mean, it's not a discussion, right, of should we.
I'm not saying we don't do it.
No, I
I'm saying
know.
how we do
Just-
it.
Just saying that out loud, it's not a discussion of, should we fix stormwater stuff? We're mandated. Just trying to figure out how the best way to pay for it. And again, whether we get rid of the stormwater fee or not. I'm all for, let's fully fund the administrative and the maintenance lines. The construction one, well.
We don't know if we can do that. Okay, can I talk now?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yep.
you've got $77,000 coming from the state of Vermont and FAA that would otherwise be uncollected. That's state funding that's off the books immediately. If you do away with the fee, I'm just relaying information. New England Rail, $18,550 gone. Walmart, you can make the case that they paid to install a stormwater system, but they also are a bigger draw and cost our property taxpayers more money per. Our police budget is probably tens of thousands of dollars higher than it would be if we didn't have Walmart. So there's a cost benefit there. You can say that we're double charging them. I would tell you that for that 10 grand, they're getting probably $50,000 a year more worth of policing services, and we're still at a loss. And there's no way to calculate what sales tax they're paying, especially after the state takes its 30% of that revenue. We talk about the LOT like we don't have a million different things that we have to use that money to pay for. We've got a town hall that's going to cost us $300,000 a year until 2031. We've got 3 sidewalk projects at $150,000 a year for the next 3 years by motion of this board. That'll probably end up being in perpetuity. And then that 150 turns out to not be enough money to do a larger scale project. It'll probably go to 250 or 300, but let's call it 150. We've got a fire station that is going to cost us, to throw a number at it that makes somewhat sense, say $3.5 million. If you take $1.5 million from our ARPA account and borrow $2 million at 15 years at a current interest rate, your loan payment's about $200,000 to $220,000 at current interest rates. If you built the fire station next year or the year after and started making the loan payments in 2025 or 2026, we wouldn't pay that off until 2040 or 2041. You've got unfunded park and rec mandates. You got the Stonehouse needs $1 million tomorrow and we're piecemealing it, which I think is still the wrong approach. We should have bonded for it when interest rates were dog crap cheap and done the whole thing up front and be making the payments back to the bank or the bond bank with LOT money. But we didn't do that because we're so afraid of pinching pennies that we step over $50 in the process. We just reached a water and sewer agreement with the city that necessitates this local option tax. I can remember it being the first issue that my grandparents talked about at our kitchen table that related to the town that I remember cognitively understanding and having a position on as a person that was too young to vote. I think I was 16, 17 when that passed in 2014. That was sold as, we're going to do what Milton did with TIF. We're going to extend water and sewer and sidewalks into open fields that we think will develop. And we're going to grow our grand list and reduce our property taxes by implementing that money. Now, in the short term, we've had to fund this building, the public works facility. It's going to have to fund a fire station. But at some point, we need to allocate at least $200,000 a year or more out of that funding to pay for water and sewer expansions, or we're going to have to do TIFs and figure out how to make the new tax revenues offset the cost of the expansions like Milton did. One or the other. But to say that we're not going to do anything related to water and sewer with that amount of money that we receive every year would be really foolish and against the original wishes when we amended our charter to implement that tax. If you only allocate $100,000 a year to the Stonehouse, whatever we decide to do with that property next door regarding a boat launch or anything else we do that we'll need to bond for or otherwise raise money to pay for. And the dock looks like crap. It's underwater half the time. We either need to decide if we're going to repair that or just let it go and carry it out. But say you spend $100,000 a year doing that, You borrow 2 million for the fire station. You continue the $150,000 a year for sidewalks. The town hall is set in stone until 2031. And say you decide you're gonna go cheap and spend only $200,000 a year on water and sewer expansions. You're up to 963 grand a year on something that in a good year will bring in somewhere around 1.1 to 1.2. So you've got a healthy budget built for you already. That's a capital plan. We just need to figure out the projects and set that in stone. So we don't have that revenue to just pull from. And if we do, I want them to tell us with a CIP in hand that says, this is everything that we need to accomplish. This is how long we think it'll take. You know, we think we can get to the stone house this year, the dock by that year. We're gonna borrow from here. We're gonna repay it from here. This is what it looks like. Until we have a report generated by somebody that knows what they're talking about, that says you have somewhere conservatively around $100,000 a year in unallocated or, you know, otherwise free LOT money that you could put to stormwater. I don't want to plan on diverting a nickel from it until we figure the rest of those priorities out. The other questions are, what I just laid out as a funding proposal for a fire station exhausts our ARPA money just about too. Where are we going to come up with a private road revolving loan fund? That's got to happen at some point. We all agree on it. We've agreed on it for years, and we haven't put pencil to paper and come up with a program and figured out how to pay for it. If we eliminate the user fee, the ERU fee, are we going to take that stormwater coordinator position and embed it in public works and pay for it out of the general fund and raise taxes to do it? That's only probably a 0.4 of a penny issue, but I know we're trying not to raise our tax rate at all for next fiscal year, so that's going to be a question. And the other factor that we really need to take into account is the fact that we're a Dillon's rule state, and if the state wants to mess with our LOT payments, if it wants to mess with our pilot payments, it will come in and it will do that. So you've got, and here's the history of it all, and where I think we're finding middle ground naturally. When we implemented $50 a year, it was meant to last us through a few inflationary increases so we wouldn't have to raise it on year 3. It was a healthy amount to start with that seemed reasonable. And it was predicated on being ready to build real projects that make a difference now. The other part of it is the phosphorus control plan isn't even half of our issue when it comes to MS4. The flow restoration plan means more than anything. And if we want to do a good job on rolling this out, we need to better inform the taxpayer by saying this has nothing to do with cleaning up the lake. If we build all these projects out, it will make absolutely no difference in the bay whatsoever. But here's why we're doing it, and point back to the EPA decision to hand it down to the state and the state's decision to hand it back down to us, explain what Dillon's rule is, put together a 2-page letter and send it to everybody in town with their next stormwater bill. And I've never seen anybody articulately explain, this is why you pay what you pay. The other thing I need to understand before we touch this is, what do we have out for grant agreements? We've got Clyde Allen Drive, we've got a scoping study on McQuam Shore. What are those predicated on us raising for money? If we cut that funding down within a certain number of years, are we going to owe money back to the state? Which is possible. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but it's possible, and I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, you know, trying to run to the door. If we can figure out that we're not ready to build anything, like I don't think it's worth spending a nickel on Tanglewood until we figure out what's happening 5 properties up the line and create a global strategy on how we're going to capture all that water from the interstate and infiltrate it as it goes down before it floods out all these properties. If we're not going to take a global approach to that, it's not worth band-aiding it one by one. So like Brian said, half our budget is supposed to be spent on construction. If we're not going to spend it on construction, and we know that for the next few years because we're spending all our time and resources on engineering, trying to come up with these more global, less piecemeal plans, then let's cut the fee down to $25. Or exempt homeowners and then cut the remaining commercial properties down to $40 or whatever is permissible. I think we're collecting too much for the work that we're doing. I think we need a more global picture. We need to better educate everyone who pays this fee on why they're paying it. And it needs to be less in the short term. If in 5 years from now, whoever's sitting in Dave's seat, I hope it's still you, but if I had to bet my house on it, I wouldn't say it would be. somebody have to tell us, okay, we're gonna start here, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go here, we're gonna go here, and then by virtue of doing all of these projects over the next number of years, we'll solve this problem and we'll get these credits on our MS4. And we need this amount of money to do it. And we want to decide that the town's going to pay 20% and we want to increase this user fee back to where it was to cover that. That's a discussion to have. But right now in the short term, you're not wrong. We're collecting way too much money and no one really understands what it's for. Those are the two biggest issues. But I don't want to drop it until we understand our grant agreements and then the future of what the next 2 to 3 to 5 years look like in terms of construction. I think that's a fair starting point. And I'd start by exempting homeowners at this point and then lowering it from $50 to whatever portion would cover just the administrative and engineering. We have to do it. If we don't do it, we're going to get ourselves in trouble. Another thing that's changed in the last, 5 odd years is when we pass this and pass that level of funding, no one from the state ever said, if you don't hit your target of 2035 and 2036 for the FRP and PCP respectively, we're just going to continue it because you had a hard time raising the funds. They told us, you're going to get it done. You're going to figure out how to do it. And if you don't, there will be health things. So if this is the way that it's turning out, if more people like us can scream about having to raise a huge amount of money to make no impact on the lake, which I imagine everywhere in the whole state that falls under this mandate, it's got to be the same talking point these people are hearing everywhere they go. They're probably softening up. So if we predicated this on figuring we needed to raise $5 million for construction costs by 2035, and now all of a sudden we think we can stretch it to 2050 and we're not going to be ready to build anything of consequence that's not a $10,000 reditching project or a $5,000 culvert replacement until 2027, then there's no need for this fee to exist as high as it is. But I don't think we should eliminate it because the problem is not going away in the long term, and we're going to have to tackle some of these. And the other funding sources that we pointed to that could be available to do this, I think will be exhausted on other stuff by the time we get to that point. So you're not wrong, Jeff. I'm going to say that you've been bringing this issue Jonathan's been bringing it since the beginning. He's got a knack for seeing the forest through the trees in a lot of ways. On not just this issue, but I really don't think eliminating the fees totally sets us up for success in the long term. Just because there's not enough fluff in the LOT to fully cover what we would need to cover. We'd have to probably reinstitute the fee at some point. So, and then I'm worried about the grant agreements that we have out for Clyde Allen and anything else that we've accepted money for, because there's a ton of fine print in all those agreements. And if there's something in there that says someone can claw money back from us, if the state sees us do this, they're going to review every one of those contracts right after we do it. And they're going to try to get any investment they can recoup back out of us, is my thought. And then it forces our hand in coming up with an actual CIP for the next 10 years for the LOT. And if by going through that process and really thinking it out, and factoring what it's going to cost to fix a stone house and what it could cost to do a boat launch or anything else, and really coming up with that, if we get to the end of that process, which could take 6 months or more, if we get to the end of that process and it says there's $200,000 a year available right now that we foresee having into the future, if not more, and we want to make that decision to divert that into the stormwater utility and temporarily cut the fee to 0 until we're ready to start doing actual construction, I'll make that motion with you. I just don't want to go cart before horse. We've already billed the fees for this year. Really, we've got to tell Dave and Sean and Al, this is the direction we're heading as far as funding goes. And the correct message to send is that we're cutting it at this point to just admin. They need to present us with a budget that shows what that admin and administrative and engineering would cost for next fiscal year. And then we need to figure out how we're going to fund it after that. And then using the LOT, I wouldn't want to do that unless we had a CIP that we could all read and digest that said, this is what the town has to spend over the next 10 years from that fund if we want to hit all of our targets. Maybe we have a discussion that says, we're not going to do the stone house from that. We're going to keep doing it piecemeal, and we're not going to touch the dock And if we do a boat launch, it'll only be with a grant, and that's how we free up another couple 100,000 to make that fee go away. But I don't wanna go through that, I don't wanna force us to have to do that.
So see, that's where we're different. I want to force us to have to do that. I want us to have to take a hard look at that budget, which is just building money every year. And have to say no to something.
Let's
Like
cut the
some-
construction.
Huh?
Let's cut half of it right now and say no
Construction's
construction.
half of it.
We're not ready to construct anything of consequence. If Dave says, leave me 50,000 a year so I can clean up ditches and do some culverts and stuff like that, maybe that's all that we keep. And if we cut that, tell me what the portion of the funding we derive is from homeowners. And if it's, if we can cut 200,000 and we're already raising only 150,000 from homeowners, and we can just eliminate homeowners right off the bat.
But so then put the load on the people that are already paying to maintain systems at their businesses and make them pay double.
Nah, it's not quite double. The state takes a lot. I just had to build a gravel wetland last year. I general contracted it and did a lot of sweat equity into it. I had about, with permitting and everything into it, about 28,000. And my reward for that is I get to pay an engineer to come in and inspect it every year and file a report with the state. I have to pay the state an annual fee, an operating fee, whatever that, I don't know what they're paying me to operate. And then every 5 years I have to pay to renew my permit, and my operating fee can go up.
No, and that's my point. You're paying all that and now you're gonna go pay on top
We
of
have a
all
credit,
that.
we have a credit manual embedded in that ordinance that gives those property owners credit over, like a TC's RV. They're defunct now, so it's okay to say it. Warner's driveway would wash out every time it rained because, Tom put in all those parking lots with no stormwater infiltration and just sent it down Route 7. That person in my mind, I think, should pay more than someone like a Walmart that has spent probably $200,000 or more on stormwater. That's why that credit exists the way it does. If you can come to us and say, this is an engineered plan, this is my state stormwater permit, I'm following it, my inspections are current, my 5-year renewal is current, they get a healthy credit against their bill. I don't know what else we can do beyond tell the state we're not gonna do any of it and then have that fight. And if we're gonna have that fight, we need all the people that Dave's gonna meet with tomorrow to agree to have it with us. Or we're not gonna come out ahead.
Don't we use that credit for the Maplefield development up opposite?
Mapleville Depot, I mean, all of them, anybody that's got a system like what Jeff's talking about is eligible to come in and receive the credit from Dave and the stormwater coordinator. We had the largest credit before ag properties were exempted. We had the largest ag credit of any utility in the state. I mean, we didn't set it up to be one size fits all. But we heard from people like Richard Cummings up in Mapleville Depot that said, I don't want to be paying double. So we worked in a credit formula to be able to provide some form of equitable relief. None of it's fair, right? All the money should come from the state. I get that.
100%.
But we are the lowest level of the totem pole of the state. We might as well be an HOA if the state is a town. Like, we get to plow the roads that the state doesn't want to plow and deal with any problems that they don't want to solve. And in exchange for that, they give us some local control over land use regulations, but not really, because Act 250 is holding the bag on all of the big ones. I mean, if we were in a home rule state where we had some type of legal autonomy, I would say let's refuse to do it and litigate it, but we're not.
I'm not saying we refuse to do it.
I
I'm
know.
saying that we cripple it to the point where without state and federal money, nothing moves.
Well, I think
And we're not gonna do that collecting $400,000 a year. We're just gonna build a huge pot of money that, and every year we're gonna ask the property owners to shell out more for what?
I think we are all sitting agreeing with that. How can we reduce it and what way is equitable?
It's easy to sit here tonight and do that. It's not, but then when budget time comes, I saw it happen this last time. And we had a small problem passing that budget, but not really that small of a problem passing that budget.
Well, as it relates to stormwater, this board is the one that sets the fee. if we want to say right now, we're anticipating cutting construction. And the worries are, check our grant agreements to make sure we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. Develop a 3-year plan as it relates to construction. And then figure out how we can lower the fee most equitably. Without fully eliminating it, because you're gonna need it again when it does come time. When someone who's not from one of these firms that we've hired that have handed us, 2 or 3 sets of bad plans for just Tanglewood alone. When we get a competent person that comes in and says, this is the global issue on the north end of town, here's how you go about solving it, and that money starts to have to flow, there will be some form of local match, whether it's 10 or 20% from the town. Even if we do receive a grant, they're rarely 100%. I mean, we're gonna need to reinstitute some type of funding mechanism to cover those costs, along with all the engineering costs to pay for whoever's developing that plan. So if we wanna take construction rate out of it, figure out how to cut the funding right down the middle, and then the part that goes hand to hand with it is educating people as to why we're even doing this to begin with. The state forced us to, it's not to clean up the lake, no matter what anybody tries to tell you, that is snake oil as far as I'm concerned. And this is the long-term plan for it. And we need to be specific, like the outcome of this discussion, whatever it ends up being regarding private rights of way, working outside of the right of way. We need to explain to people, this is the town policy on that. Set it in stone so people don't even think to call us, unless they know they have an issue that we're willing to fix. I mean, the 2 biggest issues with the rollout of the stormwater utility are the 2 we're talking about. Education as to why we're doing it was never
None.
well, a few messenger articles and a crap load of meetings that, unless you read the minutes for all of them, you'd have no understanding of it. Most people didn't find out about it until they got their bill in the mail for the first time, which stunk, getting those phone calls. And then the fact that we funded construction when we're not ready for construction. We thought we were at the time. We had plans that were ready to get grant funding to go cover Tanglewood and a bunch of other stuff. And the more we talk about it, the more we're finding out that the water in Tanglewood originates way up the hill. And unless we solve the problem coming all the way down, it's not gonna amount to anything. So now we've got to go and engineer all. Once, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what, Jonathan, Jack, you wanna, I know we all talked to quite a bit, but.
I think that horse is pretty well dead there.
Well, I think the last meeting we talked about staff working on this a little bit, so I just wanted to know if you guys worked on it at all or no.
What do you mean by working on it?
Well, I thought,
Like every day for us, for the most part, for the last like 3 months.
right, well, we talked about like different funding sources and, like how much, money came from the tax exempt people and, trying to figure out what we're gonna do with this, how we're gonna fund this. Like, I think we're not gonna come up with a solution kicking across this room for hours on it. Like, we need to have a starting point. We're gonna,
I think what I said last meeting was, we're not gonna find out from the state about this tomorrow or next month. So at least what I meant by it was perhaps pump the brakes, because until we find out from the state, Senator Brock told me about, he actually brought it up, excuse me, on the phone call about another grant thing, which I took as a very good sign, but we're not gonna know anything on this. That's why we keep talking about every meeting, but we're not gonna know by next meeting or the next meeting either.
well, the state's not giving us anything now, so I don't expect much.
Yeah.
So that we can kind of, I don't know, set in stone, but we can kind of plan on the state not helping besides the 25,000 or whatever it was.
No,
I'd look at the state as, they need to come in and pay for the construction. To get ready to that point, I think that's the only portion we need to fund. A coordinator to administer the program, all the engineering, and then to be honest with you, every cost that we can shift from the general fund to the stormwater utility. Like, we've done that in a few, we did one tonight, Sawa, their $7,500 annual contribution came right out of the general fund.
Yeah, again, I just want to have, just in my mind.
Can I have 25 minutes?
Start with 5. Go ahead.
At 3, I have a limit.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I
So-
cut you out.
So, like, I think it would be nice as a board, and maybe we'll have to have another meeting on it, but like, come up with like different ways, different percentages of funding and how we're gonna fund this thing, like a starting point, because we're kind of all over the road. And, you know, if we can have some scenarios, like if we use LT for this, if we use a little bit of ARPA money for this to get this rolling or whatever, or if we use household that $12 like the city equivalent, you know, where does that get us in, you know, certain scenarios along
Well, it also
compared to how we fund it now?
it would also, we haven't paid for anything yet, too, but it, doing it that way, I guess, would be such a moving target that it would go back to the equitable conversation, and it would be hard to make a constant formula. If we say, all right, on this project, we'll take X from ARPA, X from LOT, X from state, you know, there would be so many moving parts.
No, I'm just saying, like, so we are gonna work how the stormwater ordinance is funded.
Yeah.
Like that would, if you want me to call the motion, I'll just call the motion right now. We'll get it over with. But I'm trying to do this like, so everybody works with the same page. We just don't make the motion and then we have to do something. Like if we can work together and just come up with just certain scenarios, how we can fund it and how we're gonna accomplish this stuff here, but with like not overfunding it or like. I think we're just talking about stuff and it's not going anywhere. It's like, I don't think we're any further than we were last meeting. Like, I think we need staff to work on this with us. And I'm not saying like jump on it tomorrow, but I'm just saying like, this is never gonna move forward with us five. You know, he doesn't really want it. He wants it to stay and this guy doesn't, and this guy doesn't, I don't, and this, like, it's never gonna, we're just gonna talk about it. And just waste 2 hours of our life. That's all. Like it's not productive.
So, my only point, and then I'll quit. Is
No, I don't.
No, but I think it's important that the property owners in the town of St. Albans that don't contribute to this, but pay into it, stop that. That's not right. It's not fair. It shouldn't happen. And the alternative, which works because it's faceless, is the LOT thing. And because that money comes to us every year and it can be allocated towards infrastructure projects. And I understand that we have a whole bucket of things that we can do with $1 million a year. And we run out by the time we get to stormwater. You know why? Because you aren't gonna see it. But just put it at the top of the list. That's the thing we're gonna pay first, other than our existing obligations, which I get. And then we're just gonna have to work on the other things. We don't have to make a decision tonight, that's fine. But then the property owners of St. Albans Town don't have to feel like they're dealing with some problem up on the other end of town that they have no connection to whatsoever. And not only that, their problems aren't remedied by that pool of money. And I get it, it's $50. It's not the $50. It's the idea of doing it. I think that's what people are put off by.
On that line of thinking, everybody that is on a state highway should be exempt from paying whatever portion of our property taxes go to plow town roads. Like, it's just because.
But do I drive on those roads? Even though I may live on a class 3 road, but I go drive on a class 1 road, I don't mind maintaining that. I do not have a property, I don't own property in one of these affected areas. Why should a person who doesn't own property in an affected area pay for that? When the person in the affected area isn't gonna pay to deal with the issue on my land because I don't meet the criteria.
That's a philosophical question.
It is 100%.
It goes back to the state. I think to give these guys some consensus, we have to come up with some kind of directive for them, and that is figure out how to cut the fee. Figure out how to lower it. And make proposals as to what that could look like. You've heard us talk now for like 10 hours on this. Like, you know what we're after. Come up with some solutions for us. And in the process, like, think out how are we going to fund a fire station? We are committed to doing that in the next 3 to 5 years, if not sooner. Where's that money going to come from? the stone house and the rest of it, leave it off, and then we'll go back and we'll horse trade about that until we figure out what's a priority and what isn't. But draw a picture, like, this is where we are. These are commitments that we can't ignore. These are ones that we can put off. This is what we need to do, engineering and administrative, no construction. And if we get to the point where we're having a debate and there's we need $200,000 a year to run this. And if we cover all our bases with everything else, we still have 300,000 left in the LOT. I'll join Jeff in making the motion to cut the fee down to nothing and just use LOT. Like, I'm just so sick of talking about, like, John's right. We've been talking about this for a decade now, if not longer, and we're no further ahead for it. I don't know, it's frustrating.
And can I paraphrase Jonathan, see if I understand what you were saying? That you would like the administration to come up with a 1-year estimate of what we want to do, what the costs are for stormwater.
Well, I was thinking more of like how, well, yeah, you can do that too. But like, I was thinking like, how we're gonna fund this, because I think, well, our ultimate goal is to lower the household rate and lower the business rate. So yes, I guess if we did, I guess we gotta look at what our liabilities are currently and what we need to fund them and what we don't need to fund them. Because it seems like we're putting money in the bank, right? Because we're not doing construction, but we have enough to do construction.
Well, it's the
We have a
budget.
couple.
We're raising twice as much as we need right
So
now because we operated on bad information from engineering firms.
But I just need a place to start with, right? I don't want to sound like the guy that needs to pick apart the word, because that kind of, but I think we need a starting place, and then we can build off that starting place. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had a magic wand here to do it right now, I feel like it would be, I just want to have a utility set up, ready to go. At the state pay for construction as much as possible. We had that ERU lowered in half to 25. We have enough to keep the administrative going and the system maintenance, to the point of, if everyone's chipping in, they may not get construction on their property, but they're not paying for the construction. We're funding our town resources, our town staff to actually get all these things done that's mandated to us by the state and EPA. But I think for going forward, we're trying to, look at just some different, what would it look like if we did this or that? Correct, John?
Yeah, just like different ways of, what our current liabilities are, and maybe we just do like a 5-year. Like a 5-year outlook, and what they potentially are, what they potentially aren't, like calling out, calling out like we need, what do you call it, 250,000 for a firehouse? Out of the LLP. Like, so here's my thought, like, I'm not even gonna say, never, like, it's not even, I'm done with it. Like, I'm just gonna say, like, we have 11 bays over that town garage, like, we couldn't add on 6 more or 5 more, put fire department right with DPW. Like, if we had to really crunch it, and not like build everything, like it, like stand, like, I just think we could do a little better. We could, tighten the belt some, that's all.
Well, yeah, and I think like
There's ways that we can't just call out $250,000. We need to really look at it.
We need some kind of placeholder though.
Well, yes, but if it's only $100,000 and we're calling it 250, then that's not right.
Yeah.
Realistically, if you wanted to stick that fire department on DP, there's 11 bays. Stick the equipment that can go in the lean-to, out the lean-to, the rest of the fire trucks in the building. Like, I know everybody would like, I'm not saying do that, but when I drove by there today, I said, hey, potential, it's red, but we got yellow trucks, so it'd be really great. But I'm just saying, like, if worse come to worse and we couldn't afford a new fire department and that one like fell to the ground, you could, for 5 years, have everybody in one building. I'm just saying, nobody's gonna like this after they heard I said it, but I said it. So it's true, like, we can't always just have, 11, 12 bay DPW, and I voted for that DPW, and I'm not against it, and I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, like, if the rubber hit the road, like where we got it, like, okay, we're gonna live really, really tight for the next 5 years, it is what it is. It is
Well,
what
there's
it is.
there's a global conversation to be had about fire, how we work with the city on that. If there's any, so that's not, like, all I'm saying is, like, the ARPA funds make sense. It uses a down payment if it doesn't cover the whole thing, and the balance will be covered in the LOT. Whether we might have enough cash already built up in the LOT from having not spent the excess the last few years, we could start diverting our surplus every year into a fire department capital reserve to cover a new bill. Like, we gotta just get, and to do that, I think we really need staff. They want a CFO, we're gonna talk about that in a minute. That person's gotta come up with a report.
Let's, if we can, let's move on, turn over to those topics. We'll continue there.
Anybody wanna have a comment on the stormwater? While we're in it? No,
I got a couple of questions.
I'll let Brian, I was directing it.
Yeah, go ahead, just, we'll try to be quick because we still got 3 or 4 other items and.
Okay. Businesses are paying a heavier fee versus homeowners. But all the talk I hear of, you guys are spending that money on other projects. It's not for stormwater runoff hardly at all. Is that correct?
Well, you might be potentially right.
You already just said you had a surplus of money, thinking of using it for something else.
Yeah, I think we've had two years of it. We got some grants and then we had some problems with Tanglewood's design wasn't right, so we couldn't.
I'm talking about
Yeah,
the
LOT.
surplus as it relates to a new fire building. That's talking about the local option.
Yeah, not stormwater.
They're not, that stormwater utility is set up to be totally segregated from other town funds, so it can only get spent on that.
So the other thing is, there's some entities in the town are exempt from paying any fees at all. Correct?
Just agriculture. No, what I was mentioning is, like the state of Vermont, obviously doesn't pay property taxes, but they do pay into the stormwater utility.
Right.
So,
So how is that system fair at all? Homeowners pay $50. I pay homeowner taxes, I pay business taxes. And the business ones are really up. Granted, there's other businesses that probably pay a lot more as well. We're not getting anything for this.
yeah, the alternative, and again, remember, and this came before my time on here, was that towns have to do this. It's not like, do we want to do it or not? So it came down to basically 2 choices. Again, I wasn't on the board when this was made, but a stormwater utility fee where homeowners would pay $50, and then obviously businesses, depending on impervious. And then you would be able to include the state of Vermont, city of St. Albans, Railroad, all these other places. The other alternative, if we didn't do that, is that it would be raised up property taxes. So an average homeowner, I think, would have been, was it $180?
It would have been somewhere around 5 cents per hundred.
So it was, unfortunately, it was 2 choices, bad and worse, and they had to pick one. I mean, it's not like I don't think anyone on here loves the stormwater utility.
I do agree with it. Wow.
It was one of a mandate from the EPA and the state. You got to pick one of these 2 choices. The select board at the time, 4 years ago or so,
If
chose to do that one.
you have to have a fee, knock it right out.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about. I'd love to lower it right down. I was just gonna, my thought again, is just having a stormwater utility, I don't want to say bare bones, but one that's set up, it can operate. And then you've got to wait for the state and federal dollars. Once it comes in, a whole bunch of stuff gets done. Yeah,
When we started this hour, we thought, okay, in the next 10 years, we're gonna build $3 to $5 million worth of projects. We thought we had some that were shovel ready. The plans for the shovel ready ones ended up being junk. Like, we ended up re-engineering it a second time, and then it's still junk. It's because we're not counting water that flows in off the hill and particular, anyway. Half the fee is meant for construction. We're not ready to really construct anything, so that's half the fee right there. And the only reason, like, homeowners are capped at $50 per residence, because the average home is about 3,500 square feet of impervious between their rooftops and driveways and whatnot. And then we take that to commercial properties and we figure out exactly, with GIS mapping is probably not as perfect in the hand measurement, but we figure out like how much impervious surface does Franklin Rental have? We divide that by 3,500 square feet and we multiply that number by $50. It's $50 for every 3,500 square feet. That's the funding mechanism. If we ran it through the property tax bill, it would have been higher for everybody. It wouldn't have been as easily trackable, and it would have been easier to rob computer to pay Paul with what we were just concerned about.
You still got your exempt entities.
We didn't want that at all.
It's just the farm.
Some of
It's
us,
just the farm.
some of us want.
Some, yeah, some did, but yeah, let's, if we can, let's move on. I mean, I think any of us too are happy to talk more with you about it.
We
Absolutely.
need to start selling some hogs and chickens up there.
We're gonna change our plan.
That's right. Sell a monthly subscription, stormwater subscription.
Don't go away, man, guys. There's more to
Of course,
come.
Sean,
Like Washington. We might pass emergency spending tonight.
Sean stepped out here, so I would like to move to just an update. We've talked a lot about stormwater the last couple of months, and we've got a lot of other projects going on. I'd asked Sean just to update us on a few of them here. So I guess we're gonna have to wait for Sean here. But
Good night.
See you guys.
See you later. Take care, guys. Sean will be right back. I'm assuming here, just so we know.
Well, I could talk about some of these. You want?
Yeah, go ahead. I was gonna see if someone's.
So like the health path and sidewalks, I know that P.E.G is wrapping up the health path project now. There was a feasibility study for the really out to
The rail trail, right? Yep.
yeah, and I know that there's still some issues to work out on that project, how we're gonna cross some of the intersections. And I know that there's a homeowner out there closer to the end that's not being too cooperative about wanting something like this. So that'll all be in the report.
Yep, okay.
I'll look at it. I just started talking about the health path.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. It was a little longer. I had to take over.
Well, I can pass it over to you.
Okay.
And was there one, Sean, one sidewalk project that was ready to go out to bid? Right? Route 7 South.
Yeah.
So where are we at with that exactly?
We're working through that right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
and maybe I heard you wrong or I had a dream or something, but did you say it's possible that it could get?
It's no longer possible.
No, okay.
Yeah, because of the flood work basically going around the state. Pretty much every firm is tied up with that.
Okay.
So the original idea with quotes and talking to companies pre-bid was that it could have been done.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
month, but yeah.
So CFO update, I know we've had, you've updated me on a little bit, but just to
Yeah.
let everybody where we're at with that.
Yeah, well, I guess long story short is hopefully we can put it out to excuse me. Put it out to post in the next 2 months, but we're gonna have to talk about that with the new budget situation, so.
Okay. And water sewer study, and this kind of came up, I know I'd asked Sean a while back where we were on the water sewer study that, what I recalled was we started using for ARPA, this is way prior to last summer, where we, and had done a summer of 22 when before we had any police or affiliation fee discussions, and Sean looked into it for me and mentioned that it didn't look like it had started.
Correct.
Where I was under the impression it had started
So
in
why do we wanna
2022,
do that
so-
at all?
So where are we at with that,
Why do
Sean?
we not wanna throw any money in it?
Well, so that's another reason why I wanted to bring it up. The
I mean, how much-
discussion on it was water, I think, like even on McQuam Shore running water.
You were just talking about stormwater and funding and fire stations. How much would this study? It's gonna be $1 million study.
I don't.
The original,
50, I thought.
so when I started working here, Emily was looking at hiring Hoyle Tanner associates to do it, so I started going back and forth with them, trying to get an agreement from them. They gave me an agreement, and I looked at the billing rate and said, this is ridiculous. And I talked to them, I tried to get them to come down on it, and they wouldn't come down. So, and I talked to the state about the fee, and said, these are just way too much for what we want to do, I know other people can do it. the same thing for us. So I had a meeting with like 4 of us, went up there and people, and they still wouldn't budge, so I pretty much jettisoned them. So I was looking at hiring somebody else, and I'm actually meeting with them on Wednesday to go through the scope and work with them.
So what's the purpose? Why do we want to do it?
Well, and again, I just want to say it was,
We did it once, 20 years ago.
yeah.
No, well, because
Well,
we,
Was out of
no,
control.
what we, I was chair, right, and I said, I said, look, we wanted to pick a spot. Where we could potentially put water and sewer in. And we said, yeah, and well, no, it could be whatever, it could be hooked on the city, but let's go like. It was either gonna be like on the south end, industrial park, you know, on the north end somewhere, and then we picked the Bay area. Because it was gonna be like, I think it was the same time we're doing the downtown. Thing and all that, and we said. Okay, this is potentially gonna be one of the biggest growth areas is the Bay Area. So let's study this area for water and sewer. I believe that's how.
So it came up, we knew we were gonna get a check for over 1.9, but not quite 2. And at the time, it was, you had 3 years and that was it. You had 3 years to spend it and it could only be spent on public safety or infrastructure. So we looked at what could we spend $2 million on that wouldn't require taking out a huge loan to cover the remaining $48 million if we tried to do something big with water and sewer. So the thought was there some area in the bay that had gravelly soil or something that we could find and then do a decentralized sewer system, which is basically a giant publicly maintained mound, and then do a series of pipes and pump stations around the bay to pick up. Some people thought about picking up failed septic properties. I was thinking more along the lines of like, hey, landowner that doesn't have land in the land trust, your property says that we could put in one of these systems that could support 50 homes. If you go through the process of permitting it, we'll amend our zoning from 1 acre to ½ acre, and we'll put this in, and then you're gonna pay, you know, the users will pay user fees to maintain it and replace it, so nobody else in the town has to put a nickel into it. It was an attempt to find a place to park that money quickly to get it off our books before the feds recouped it. And then we were trying to fix up the bay more at the same time. But if we say we got a fire station now that we know we're gonna need to spend some serious money on.
So did Bill.
Is
Well, that's
that, Dave,
yeah.
and I'm just gonna go back to Dave, is that what the request was, right? Something,
Yeah, it was to study water and sewer in the Bay Area. And I know that there's a loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund to do this work. And then it's like 100% subsidy on it.
So it wouldn't come out of
let's
our.
do that. Yeah.
Originally, it was meant for ARPA, but they found another funding source to pay for it after, so that's why we had to pull the plug on it.
So if, let's go down the road, would we ever do it? And the cost?
Because it could be tens of millions.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a, well,
Jack, you have water up there. Not
Yeah.
everybody in the bay does.
so that.
That's sulfur water.
That's your problem. You're private.
Yeah, I know.
Jack.
Yeah, and your water's my problem too.
Yeah.
So right now, Dave, we don't have that out.
It's like shit, 'cause it-
No,
We do not have an agreement with anybody.
no.
I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, if, should this just be something we consider next meeting, put it on to just come back to this, should we go forward or should we not?
Well, these guys you're meeting with gonna give you a number?
The
After
smaller
I leave
study.
it, then we'll come up with the scope. And then they'll put their budget for that.
Yeah.
The schedule.
Roughly what that other one would cost, well,
The other one was like $500,000.
$500,000 for a study for 1.9 million. Yeah, okay. All
We
right.
already started, it's planned somewhere.
Well, hopefully they would capture other water and sewer coming onto the town and not just look at the town, so the plan is
Yes.
full of crap.
So-
Stormwater.
I mean, maybe next meeting we can come back to look at that and see if. I don't know what we call it, water sewer, we just call our funding, we need to go back and see what we want to do with that now.
I think it'd be interesting to hear what they have to say.
Who's they? About people with the, yeah.
Well, let's hear if they say like, oh, it's not feasible or so. I wouldn't, they might say like, this ain't gonna work, but I don't know. Like, let's see what they have to say.
Sorry, yeah,
I'm not the professional. Yeah, in that department.
okay, we'll kill it later. So let's do that, since you already started it, let's see where that goes. All right.
So, can we back up to the health path
Health path.
and sidewalks? It says here, planning grant for Route 7 North. Is that right?
That was that one that we
Yeah.
got, like, was it 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, it was the grant,
Megan
yeah.
did it real quick to do a grant, just to see if we got the funding, and we did.
Yeah.
All that, I think all that was to say that we did get awarded the grant.
So
Yeah.
what does that cover?
It's just a scoping grant, a planning grant for, I believe, road to connect the city up past Walmart. Just a feasibility study.
We had a meeting, okay, let me.
Well, go ahead, tell it, because I remember
We
that.
were at a meeting, several meetings. There was a small working group of private citizens that seemed to be ring-led by someone from City Hall and then a couple private people.
About the livability study a couple years ago.
They had a study done.
Yeah, it's a
I think it
livability.
was done by Stantec, maybe?
I know it's a livability study from a few years ago.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
had sidewalks on one or both sides of the street the whole way. The cost for it in 2019 was $7 million. And we looked at that and we said, we've got
That's outrageous.
we've got a rail trail.
Yeah.
You can get on it from the city line. You can get up into the Franklin Park West area. And then you can walk down Franklin Park West. There's already supposed to be a path or a sidewalk as part of that approval for that park. Down, there's a sidewalk in front of Price Chopper where the bank is. And then all we'd have to do is go down to Walmart from there. And at the same time, the Handy family came in and said, hey, the Act 250 is telling us we need to build this sidewalk in front of our dealership. And all we're gonna do is park cars on it because it leads to nowhere. How about instead, we'll pay the state to hire somebody to attach from the sidewalk that was supposed to be built but hasn't been built yet by the newest bank by Tucker's Way, the credit union. There's supposed to be a sidewalk in there, and then you want to attach that and bring it to Maple Fields. So we started this whole conversation about how are we gonna tackle sidewalks? What should that look like? Who should pay for it? And it ended with the north end of town, for whatever reason, is not high up on the totem pole for us. And I think we looked at our plan. I don't know if it's a policy or a plan, the sidewalk plan. And we amended our priorities to knock that down a few, because at the end of the day, the best argument for it was people walking from the city to go to work in the north end. And the whole argument to get the town to do it was predicated on you owe these people safe pedestrian, infrastructure to get to their jobs. And if we can't do that, then no one will work at Hannaford's. And I called and he called nonsense and said, let's talk to Green Mountain Transit Authority and get a couple extra routes in, and then talk to all these people that are supposedly having problems recruiting employees from the city and get them all on the same shift schedule and make sure we're running a bus, because we shouldn't spend $7 million to make a bunch of folks who have a lower socioeconomic status walk through the snow every day to work.
I mean, there's a bigger sidewalk that is gonna, the estimate is less than half of $7 million. So I think, honestly, I read that livability study. I even commented to Meg, I go, what was the point of this? So apologies for what happened back then. But this is also just scoping. This isn't us doing the project. I would be very surprised, baffled even, if it was $7 million. That's
What, the scoping?
preposterous. Oh, God, no, scoping study is largely paid for. Yeah, it's 60,000. So, I mean, if we didn't have it, we wouldn't do it. That's what we do these for. You guys know. It's just the scoping study. It's largely being paid for 80%.
In my years, how many studies we've done that didn't have to
I hear that a lot.
That's gonna be one of them.
throw money at this study, that, study this, study that.
If you don't want to do it.
Grant money, you can throw it wherever you want.
And
Exactly.
these firms make a boatload of money out of doing these
Yeah,
stupid
that's
studies
right.
that
Just ask
nobody,
Deborah.
that doesn't amount to nothing. If you wanna do something, do it, never mind studying it, just get her done. Of
Without studies, you can't get grants.
course, yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the work.
Well, then we don't do it.
Anything else on any of those three? As we can finish
Nope.
up this Max 250 and.
Nope, just information on
Got
Westview condos and Daniel.
Yep. All right, thank you. I don't have a chair's report. Anyone have any other business?
Oh, I've been asked a couple of times, the town used to have a dumpster where people could bring their metal, like washing machines and stuff. We had that for years and now we don't have it anymore.
We got rid of it because nobody could maintain it, period.
We maintain.
It was always overflowing
Oh,
because we wouldn't call Hodge and Brothers to pick it up. That's what it amounts to. Like every other business that when it's full, you call them, they come get it, day or two. Like you can't let it go weeks sitting there
Right,
full.
right.
Like I live right there and people, this is a heated discussion for me because people would sit there and lie to my face. Oh, it just fills up. No, it doesn't fill up over a day. And then people, of course, nobody was policing it because we moved up to DPW. And the gate was being left open and people
They
would leave
still had it down here?
down here, yeah.
Yeah.
And
All
people
over
were leaving paint and there was like, it wasn't being policed all that way. That's, I'm all in favor for bringing it back. I don't know how Dave feels. But anyway, it worked not bad for years.
Yeah.
I've lived down here 20 years. It seemed like the last 6 or like, because they moved up there and they were still kind of using this place. Like when they weren't down here, that's when it fell apart because they weren't here. Some days they probably never even came down here. So.
That's something that the residents use.
Yeah,
We do have a metal dumpster out at Commission. When I started up there, there was just piles of crap there, and we cleaned it all up. And we do have a metal dumpster there, but we discourage people from coming in because they drop all kinds of.
yeah,
shit.
that was the problem.
And just like a week or so ago, like they made a bunch of wood. We just dumped it in the back and John tried to stop them and they just sped right by them. And then the next day, one TV showed up back there. It's like, so we're putting up a no dumping sign.
I mean, they still do it down. I caught a guy early this spring. He was bringing this metal shelving down. I pulled in and said, what are you doing with that? He was leaving it here. I said, pick it up. I said, this ain't a dump.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we could. I'm like, by the gate? You thought you could leave it by the gate? Like,
Example of a couple bad eggs.
They used to throw it.
yeah,
on
that's
the
the problem.
Unless we're gonna pay for
Should
this.
do a
more
scope and
than-
set, thinking about a dumpster.
All right, so let's, I guess we won't worry about putting that one back on the.
Okay, just saw that, that was my other business. I've been asked a couple of times what happened to the
Yep.
dumpster.
Next up, we have scheduled. Next one we had was 2 Mondays from now, and I think we talked very briefly about that last time. I definitely won't be here and Jack may or may not be here.
Maybe carrying a pail.
Yep, so we obviously we can keep that date, which is fine. Al suggested moving it to the 18th instead. I guess now's the time to decide that, but it's
Well, I could do Zoom maybe if I can't come in.
It'd be great for me to move the meeting because I'll be covered up. I'm senior busy.
Covered.
That's
So-
the deadline, day after.
Too bad I couldn't help.
so you're just that one day, Jeff, that you're.
No, every day between now and then, but I'll be wrapping up, trying to get done then. So if we moved it a couple of days, it would be helpful.
I'm gonna the 18th. That's
But-
Jeff's reason alone is enough to move
That's
it.
fine, yeah, 18, I guess, is that a motion?
Do we need one?
No, we don't need one.
Okay.
But if you're not gonna be here.
Is everyone
Jack's
okay
not
with
gonna
the
be here.
18th then?
Well, how long will it take to get?
Yeah.
So next select board meeting would be Wednesday, the 18th instead, because there might be 3 members maybe who can't make it. The one after that is, we got November 6th is the next following meeting after that. And we'll figure out a budget meeting we'll make sure we get that finalized, hopefully, so we can put that on the town calendar soon. And I think that is it for the schedule. I wish I had my mouse, Jonathan.
Come on by, you want to keep
You should
Thank
get
you.
these paper things, they work.
Okay, do we have, we could have someone give us the spiel into the executive session? I don't think it wasn't on the thing. Someone have the language for that handy.
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, please.
Make a motion to go into executive session, discuss contractual. Is it just contractual tonight?
Yep. Yes.
Contractual matter where premature general public knowledge of the subject matter would place the town or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Further move, enter into executive session to discuss a contractual matter under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of Vermont statutes, and to invite in town manager Sean Atkins and interim director of operations Al Vogel.
So moved.
Well said. Thank you.
Fabulous.
All in favor? Aye. Aye, thank you.
Thank you, Dane.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.